1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 2 reads, "For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified." Paul, the writer of Corinthians, was grateful for his brethren in Corinth, but he was worried about them. They had divided into factions, each group following his favorite teacher of the gospel. We read that in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, 10 through 13. And this kind of sectarianism was common in cities like Corinth, of course, where the public forum was filled with philosophers, orators, and teachers, each wooing followers by showing himself to be more on the intellectual cutting edge than the others. Yet this was the very kind of attractiveness Paul tried to avoid. "I decided," he said, "to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified." And his reason was both clear and practical. "My speech and my message were not implausible words of wisdom, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God." 1 Corinthians 2, verses 4 and 5. Jesus Christ. It's hard for human reason to accept the fact that the creator of the universe took human form in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. But that's exactly what the gospel affirms. Only once in history did such a thing happen. And having happened, the person in whom it happened, Jesus, is now the one through whom God is offering to reconcile humans to himself, and him crucified. When God became a man, he did so in order to die for our sins. It was not to be a great prophet or a perfect moral example, but to die an atoning death that God entered our world as a human being. Speaking of himself, Jesus said, "The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Taken from Mark chapter 10 and verse 45. So the gospel is not just the message of Christ, but it is the message of Christ crucified. And God in the person of Jesus Christ, if God in the person of Jesus Christ did not die for our sins, then we are still lost. When we come to Christ, accepting his invitation, we come empty-handed, recognizing our own insufficiency and lack of power to procure our own salvation. But more than that, we come yielding to his view of what our greatest need is. Whatever other gifts our wisdom might say are more needful, we are content to receive that for which he was crucified, the forgiveness of our sins. And it's for that reason that we're gathered here this morning, because Christ died for us. He died so that we can have forgiveness of sins, so that we can be made right to have that relationship with God the Father. And at this time, we're going to partake of the cup and the bread. And as we do so, I implore you to think on that sacrifice that was made on our behalf so that we can have that right relationship with God the Father.